My brother slept with my wife and they claimed she was pregnant to steal my inheritance. After I cut them all off, a medical report proved my brother is infertile, and my parents realized they traded me for a total stranger's baby. My brother told my parents my wife was carrying his baby. He said they were in love. He said the child deserved the family inheritance because he was continuing the bloodline. My parents believed him. Gave him my share. Cut me out of the will. Told me I was the selfish one for not accepting it. 14 months later, a medical report landed on my father's desk. My brother has been infertile since birth. Can't produce a single viable cell. Never could. The baby my parents rewrote their will for doesn't share a drop of our blood. They traded their real son for a stranger's baby. And now they want me back. I'm not going back. My name is Prescott Hale. I'm 37. Structural engineer. I design buildings that don't collapse. I also designed an exit plan for my family that they still haven't figured out how to get around. My brother Langston is 34. He sells insurance. When he shows up. Which is about 60% of the time. The other 40% he's doing whatever Langston does, which historically includes borrowing money he won't return, crashing cars he didn't pay for, and sleeping with women he shouldn't be near. Including my wife. My ex-wife is Noelle Hale. Together 6 years. Married 3. She was an interior designer. Good eye. Better smile. The kind of woman who makes a room feel finished just by standing in it. I loved her the way engineers love things. Precisely. Completely. With documentation. She didn't love me back the same way. She loved me the way people love a house. Appreciated the structure. Got bored with the walls. My parents are Wendell and Margot Hale. My father is 68. Retired contractor. Built the company that built half the commercial buildings in this county. Sold it at 60 for $3.2 million. Invested smart. By the time this story starts, the family estate was worth approximately $4.1 million. House. Investments. Land. Insurance policies. The will split everything 50-50. Prescott and Langston. Equal shares. $2.05 million each. I didn't need the money. I have my own career, my own income, my own savings. But the will wasn't about money. It was about recognition. About my father saying, both my sons matter equally. Langston needed it. Langston always needed it. Not emotionally. Financially. Because Langston spent money the way fire spends oxygen. Fast. Completely. With nothing left when it was done. He owed $38,000 in credit card debt. A $22,000 car loan that was 4 months past due. $6,000 to a friend he'd convinced to co-sign an apartment lease. His insurance sales brought in $42,000 a year on a good year. Last year wasn't a good year. He made $29,000 and spent $51,000. Now let me tell you what he did. Noelle and I were trying to have a baby. 18 months. Fertility consultations. Tests. The whole process that makes you feel like a science experiment with a mortgage. We'd been told everything was normal. Just needed time. During those 18 months Langston was coming over more. Helping Noelle with design projects. That's what she told me. He's got a good eye, she said. He helps me with client presentations. Langston has never designed anything except excuses. But I trusted my wife. And I trusted my brother. Because that's what you do when you're the steady one. You trust. You build. You hold things together while other people lean on the structure you provide. I found out on a Tuesday. Not through catching them. Not through a phone. Through Langston's mouth. At my parents' dinner table. In front of my mother's pot roast. He stood up. Glass of wine in hand. He said, I have an announcement. I thought he'd gotten a promotion. Maybe a new job. Something normal. He said, Noelle and I are in love. We've been together for 4 months. And she's pregnant. With my baby. The table went silent. My mother's fork stopped midair. My father looked at Langston like he was reading a blueprint that didn't make sense. I looked at Noelle. She was sitting next to me. My wife. At my parents' table. While my brother announced he'd been sleeping with her for 4 months and she was pregnant. She didn't look at me. She looked at her plate. Like the pot roast held answers the rest of us didn't have. I said, Noelle. Is this true? She said, I'm sorry, Prescott. It just happened. We tried to stop it. 4 months of trying to stop it. Interesting way to describe an ongoing affair. I stood up. I said, Langston. You're telling me you slept with my wife. For 4 months. Got her pregnant. And you're announcing it at a family dinner. He said, I know this is hard. But we wanted everyone to know at the same time. No secrets. No lies. Just the truth. No lies. From a man who'd been lying for 4 months. To my face. In my house. Eating my food. Borrowing my tools. Asking me to help him move a couch last month when he was probably sleeping with my wife the night before. I looked at my father. I said, Dad. Are you hearing this? My father cleared his throat. He said, Son. This is. This is a lot to process. Let's all take a breath. Take a breath. My brother just announced he impregnated my wife, and my father's response was a breathing exercise. My mother spoke next. She said, "Prescott, I know you're hurt. But Langston and Noelle clearly have feelings for each other. And there's a baby now. A grandchild. We need to think about the baby." A grandchild. My mother heard the word baby and every other fact in the room disappeared. Her son was betrayed. Didn't matter. There was a baby. I said, "What exactly are you asking me to do here?" My mother said, "We're asking you to be the bigger person. To understand that these things happen. To think about the family." I said, "The family. The family where my brother sleeps with my wife and announces it over pot roast. That family." My father said, "Nobody's excusing what happened. But Langston is your brother. Noelle is carrying his child. Our grandchild. We need to move forward." Move forward. To where? To the place where I pretend my brother didn't destroy my marriage and everyone eats pot roast and smiles. I said, "I need to know something. Right now. Before I make any decisions. Are you choosing him? Over me? Right now? At this table?" Nobody answered. The silence was the answer. I said, "Then we're done." I left. Noelle called after me. "Prescott. Please. We can talk about this." I said, "Talk to your lawyer. She'll be hearing from mine." I drove home. Called my attorney Quinlan Park before I hit the highway. He's done my contracts. My property work. My business deals. Practical man. Fast mover. I said, "Quinlan. My wife has been having an affair with my brother. She's pregnant. They announced it tonight at a family dinner. I need a divorce filed and I need my father's estate plan reviewed. Tonight." He said, "The estate plan? Why?" I said, "Because I know what's coming. My brother is $66,000 in debt. He just produced a grandchild. My parents will rewrite the will to give him more. I guarantee it. I want to know my options before they do it." Quinlan said, "If the will is rewritten before you take action, your options narrow significantly. I'll pull the current documents first thing tomorrow." I said, "Pull them tonight. I'll pay the overtime." He pulled them. The current will, 50-50 split. Clean. Simple. But here's what Quinlan found. The will contained a clause that my father's attorney had written years ago. It said, "In the event that one beneficiary produces a direct heir and the other does not, the beneficiary with the heir shall receive an additional 20% of the estate to be held in trust for the child. A bloodline bonus. 20% more for having a grandchild." My father had written this when we were teenagers. Probably assumed we'd both have kids eventually. Never imagined the clause would be weaponized by one brother against the other. Quinlan said, "If your brother's child is recognized as a legitimate heir, he gets 70%. You get 30%. That's the clause." I said, $2.87 million for Langston. $1.23 million for me. Because he slept with my wife and produced a baby. Quinlan said, "That's the math." I said, "Can I challenge the clause?" He said, "You can. But it's your father's will. He has the right to set any conditions he wants. Your challenge would be based on fraud. If the baby isn't your brother's, the clause doesn't apply." I filed that information. Didn't act on it yet. But I filed it. Divorce first. I served Noelle 3 days after the dinner. She opened the envelope in our kitchen. The same kitchen where she'd stood making coffee while texting my brother. I know because I'd gone through the phone records by then. 247 texts between them in 4 months. Average of 2 per day. Every one sent while I was at work. She said, "You don't have to do this." I said, 247 texts in 4 months. While I was designing a hospital expansion. While I was paying the mortgage. While I was sitting in fertility clinics wondering why we weren't getting pregnant. You were already pregnant. Just not with my baby. So yes. I do have to do this. She said, "The baby could be yours. The timing overlaps." I said, "Get a DNA test. If it's mine, we'll have a very different conversation. If it's not, you'll have a very different life." She didn't get a DNA test. She refused. Said it was invasive. Said it showed a lack of trust. Lack of trust. From the woman who slept with my brother for 4 months. The divorce moved fast. Noelle didn't fight. She wanted out. Wanted Langston. Wanted the baby. Wanted the version of life where the boring husband disappears and the exciting brother takes his place. I got the house. She got her car and personal accounts. $11,200. Less than the debt Langston brought into the relationship. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, my father called. He said, "Prescott. Your mother and I have been talking. With the baby coming, we want to make sure the family is provided for. We've decided to update the estate plan to reflect the new situation." I said, "What new situation?" He said, "Langston and Noelle are having a child. Our grandchild. The will has a clause about direct heirs. We're activating it. Langston will receive 70%. You'll receive 30%. We think that's fair given the circumstances. Fair. My brother sleeps with my wife. Produces a baby. And gets rewarded with an extra $1.64 million from the family estate. Because the baby is a Hale. I said, Dad. You're giving my brother more of the inheritance because he got my wife pregnant. He said, we're providing for our grandchild. I said, you're rewarding the man who destroyed my marriage. With money that was supposed to be mine. He said, it's not a reward. It's a provision. The baby needs to be taken care of. I said, the baby hasn't been born yet. You haven't met this child. And you're already rewriting your will based on the claim of a man who owes $66,000 and has never told the truth about anything in his life. He said, Langston is the father. Noelle confirmed it. I said, Noelle refused a DNA test. She refused to prove paternity. And you're restructuring a $4.1 million estate based on her word and Langston's claim. Without verification. He said, we don't need verification. This is family. We trust our son. I said, you have 2 sons. You just stopped trusting one of them. I hung up. Called Quinlan. I said, they're rewriting the will. Activating the bloodline clause. I need to challenge it. Quinlan said, on what grounds? I said, fraud. The baby hasn't been proven to be Langston's. No DNA test. No paternity verification. They're restructuring a multi-million-dollar estate based on an unverified claim from a man with $66,000 in debt who has every financial motive to lie. Quinlan said, that's a strong argument. But we need more than argument. We need evidence. I said, I'll get it. I didn't get it right away. But I started building. The way I build everything. Foundation first. Then structure. Then the parts nobody sees that hold the whole thing together. I went no contact. Same week. Changed my number. Deleted social media. Told my firm I was taking a personal leave. Moved to a rental apartment 40 minutes from my old house. New address. New phone. New bank. My parents tried to reach me. 14 calls in the first week. All to a disconnected number. They drove to my house. I'd already changed the locks and wasn't there. They called my office. My assistant said, Mr. Hale is on personal leave. I can't provide contact information. Langston tried next. He found my work email. Sent a message that said, bro, come on. You're overreacting. I know the situation is messed up but you're making it worse by disappearing. Mom is crying every day. Dad changed the will because he wants what's best for everyone. Just come to the table. We can work this out. I forwarded the email to Quinlan. Filed it. Didn't respond. Noelle tried through her sister. Her sister called my office. My assistant said the same thing. Personal leave. No contact information. 3 months. No contact. Nothing from me. Just silence. While I was building the case. Here's what I did during those 3 months. I hired a private medical investigator. Not a regular PI. A specialist who handles insurance fraud and medical records disputes. A woman named Harlow. $180 an hour. Expensive. Worth it. I told Harlow, my brother claims he fathered a child. I have reason to believe he may be infertile. I need his medical history without tipping him off. Harlow said, I can't access his medical records directly. That's illegal. But I can investigate through legitimate channels. Insurance claims. Pharmacy records. Prior medical consultations that may be part of public or semi-public filings. She found it in 6 weeks. Not through hacking. Through paperwork. Langston had applied for a life insurance policy 3 years ago. Standard application. Part of the process requires a medical exam. The insurance company ran blood work, urinalysis, and a basic fertility panel because Langston had checked a box on the form indicating he'd been treated for a reproductive health concern. The insurance company's internal records showed the results. Azoospermia. 0 viable sperm. Congenital. The insurance company had flagged it internally because it affected their risk assessment. It wasn't in Langston's regular medical file. It was in the insurance company's underwriting file. Harlow obtained it through a records request filed under a provision that allows interested parties to access insurance underwriting data when a fraud investigation is pending. The report was 4 pages. The key line was on page 2. Applicant presence with congenital azoospermia. Sperm count, 0. Condition is permanent and non-reversible. Applicant was informed of results at time of examination. Applicant was informed. Langston knew. He knew 3 years ago. Before Noelle. Before the affair. Before the baby announcement. He knew he couldn't father a child and he claimed the baby anyway. Because the baby was worth $2.87 million. I called Quinlan. I said, I have the medical report. Langston is infertile. He's known for 3 years. The baby isn't his. He lied to our parents to trigger the bloodline clause and steal my inheritance. Quinlan said, this is fraud. Not just family drama. Actual, documentable fraud. He knowingly claimed paternity of a child he couldn't have fathered in order to influence the distribution of a $4.1 million estate. I said, what are my options? He said, civil fraud claim against Langston. Challenge to the estate modification. And if you want to go nuclear, a criminal referral for fraud by deception. Some states prosecute this. Yours is one of them. I said, all of it. File all of it. Quinlan filed the civil fraud claim on a Tuesday. Langston was served at his apartment. He called my old number. Disconnected. Called my parents in a panic. My mother called Quinlan's office. She said, what is this? Why is Prescott suing his brother? Quinlan said, your son Langston claimed paternity of a child to trigger a bloodline clause in your husband's estate plan. A medical report obtained through legal channels proves Langston has been infertile since birth. He knew this. He lied. Your other son is pursuing appropriate legal remedies. My mother said, that's impossible. Langston is the father. Noel said so. Quinlan said, Noel said so. Langston said so. The medical report says neither of them told the truth. Your son Prescott is the only person in this family who bothered to verify a claim that was about to cost him $1.64 million. I'd suggest you verify it too. My mother hung up. I know because Quinlan told me. He said, she was crying when she hung up. I said, she cried when Langston announced the baby too. Happy tears that time. She'll live. My father called Quinlan the next day. Angrier. Louder. He said, my son is trying to destroy this family over money. Quinlan said, your son is trying to protect his inheritance from a fraudulent claim. The medical evidence is clear. Langston cannot father children. The baby is not your grandchild. The estate modification was based on a lie. My father said, I don't believe that. I'll get my own test done. Quinlan said, we encourage that. A court-ordered DNA test would resolve this in days. My father ordered the DNA test himself. Didn't wait for the court. Bought a kit. Swabbed the baby. Sent it to a lab. Results came back in 7 days. 0% match with Langston Hale. 0% match with Wendell Hale. The baby shares 0 DNA with my family. 0. Not reduced. Not partial. 0. My father sat with those results for 3 days before he called anyone. I know because Quinlan's office received a call from my father's attorney on day 4. The attorney said, Mr. Wendell Hale would like to discuss reversing the estate modification and exploring options for reconciliation with his son Prescott. Quinlan called me. He said, your father wants to reverse the will. He's confirmed the DNA results. The baby isn't a Hale. I said, reverse the will to what? He said, original 50-50. I said, no. Tell him the original terms are off the table. He activated the bloodline clause for Langston based on a lie. He chose Langston. He cut my share from 50% to 30% without verification. He told me the baby was more important than his son's betrayal. The original split doesn't account for any of that. Quinlan said, what do you want? I said, 80-20. My favor. With a provision that Langston's 20% is held in trust with an independent trustee. He doesn't touch it until he completes a financial management course and maintains employment for 24 consecutive months. Quinlan said, that's aggressive. I said, my brother stole my wife and faked a pregnancy to steal $1.64 million. Aggressive is the minimum. My father's attorney called back. He said, Mr. Hale finds the 80-20 proposal unacceptable. He suggests 60-40 in Prescott's favor. Quinlan said, my client's civil fraud claim is pending. The medical evidence is conclusive. If this goes to trial, the estate modification will be voided entirely. And the court may award punitive damages against Langston for fraud by deception. 80-20 is the settlement that keeps this out of court. Take it or we'll see you at trial. My father's attorney called back 2 hours later. He said, Mr. Hale accepts the 80-20 split. He also wants to speak with Prescott directly. Quinlan said, my client will consider direct communication after the estate documents are revised, filed, and notarized. The documents were revised in 9 days. Filed. Notarized. I get 80% of the estate. $3.28 million. Langston gets 20%. $820,000. Held in trust. With conditions he'll probably never meet. After the signing, I agreed to one phone call. My father. 10 minutes. Through Quinlan's office. Speakerphone. Quinlan present. My father said, Prescott. I'm sorry. We believed Langston. We shouldn't have. I said, you believed Langston because you've always believed Langston. He's been lying to you for 34 years and you've been paying for it. This is just the most expensive lie. He said, we changed the will without talking to you. Without verifying. That was wrong. I said, you changed the will because Langston told you there was a baby. A Hale baby. And the idea of a grandchild mattered more to you than the son standing in front of you telling you he'd been betrayed. He said, your mother is destroyed. I said, Mom was destroyed when she told me to be the bigger person while my brother announced he'd been sleeping with my wife. She chose the baby over me. And the baby isn't even yours. He said, we know that now. I said, now isn't good enough. Now is after you cut my inheritance. After you sided with Langston. After you told me I was the selfish one for not accepting my brother's affair. Now is where you land after running out of wrong choices. He said, will you come home? I said, I am home. 40 minutes from you. In an apartment I pay for with money I earned. Nobody in this apartment is sleeping with anyone they shouldn't be. Nobody is faking a pregnancy. Nobody is rewriting a will at midnight because a con artist produced a baby. This is my home. You're welcome to visit. When I say you can. Through Quinlan. He said, through your lawyer. I said, through my lawyer. Because the last time I talked to you directly, you told me a stranger's baby was more important than your son. I'm not doing that again without representation. The call ended at 8 minutes. 2 minutes short of the agreed 10. I didn't need the extra 2. Langston. Here's what happened to the golden son. Noelle left him. Of course she did. The same week the DNA results came back, she packed a bag and disappeared. Didn't tell Langston where she was going. Didn't tell my parents. Just left with the baby and a suitcase and whatever she could fit in the car I'd paid off during our marriage. The baby's real father is a man named Sutton. A personal trainer Noelle met at a gym 2 years ago. Before me. Before Langston. Sutton is the one who was always there. The background player nobody knew about. Langston knew the baby wasn't his. He knew because of the insurance report from 3 years ago. He knew he was infertile. And he knew the bloodline clause was worth $1.64 million. So he took a baby that wasn't his, claimed it was, convinced my parents to rewrite their will, and tried to steal the majority of the estate. $66,000 in debt and a $1.64 million motive. That's the math of my brother's morality. Langston is now in the fraud case. Quinlan isn't dropping it even though the will has been revised. He said, the fraud was committed regardless of the outcome. Your brother knowingly made a false paternity claim to influence the distribution of a multi-million-dollar estate. That's prosecutable. The DA's office has the referral. Langston hired a public defender. He can't afford private counsel because he's $66,000 in debt and his insurance job cut his hours to 15 a week after word got around about the fraud claim. Small industry. Bad reputation travels fast. My parents are quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The collapsed kind. The kind where they sit in the house and look at walls and wonder how they built a family that ended up here. My mother sends letters to Quinlan's office. 1 a week. Handwritten. I've read 3 of them. They all say some version of the same thing. We were wrong. We chose wrong. We miss you. Please come home. She hasn't once asked about Noelle. Hasn't asked about the baby. Hasn't asked where Sutton is or whether the child is being cared for. She only asks about me. Which tells me that the baby she chose over me was never about the baby. It was about Langston. It was always about Langston. Last week Quinlan forwarded me a letter from Langston. Short. 2 paragraphs. It said, Prescott. I know I can't fix this. I know what I did. I claimed the baby because I was drowning in debt and the clause was right there. I convinced myself it was victimless. That you'd still get $1.23 million and I'd get enough to start over. I didn't think about what it would do to you. I didn't think about anything except the number. I'm sorry. For Noelle. For the lie. For the baby. For all of it. I read it once. Then I called Quinlan. I said, file it. He said, no response. I said, his apology included the sentence I convinced myself it was victimless. He knew it had a victim. He just decided the victim was acceptable. That's not remorse. That's accounting. File it. Filed. I'm sitting in my apartment right now. Clean. Quiet. No brother announcing affairs over pot roast. No wife texting someone else while I design hospitals. No parents rewriting wills at midnight for a baby that doesn't carry our name. $3.28 million coming to me when the estate activates. A career I built. A reputation I earned. A lawyer who answers his phone on the first ring. And a family I had to sue to be seen by. My brother slept with my wife. Faked a pregnancy claim. Tried to steal $1.64 million. Got caught by a 3-year-old insurance form he forgot he filled out. My parents chose the baby. The baby chose a personal trainer named Sutton. And I chose myself. Because nobody else in that family was going to. The will is revised. The fraud case is pending. The letters keep coming. And every time my mother writes please come home, I think about the dinner table. The pot roast. The announcement. The silence when I asked, are you choosing him over me? That silence is my answer. It was my answer then. It's my answer now. I don't need to go home. I need the people who live there to understand why I left. And based on the letters, they're starting to. 1 page at a time. 1 apology at a time. 1 consequence at a time. But some doors, once closed, don't open because someone knocks. They open when the person inside decides the knocking means something different than it used to. I haven't decided yet. And until I do, the door stays closed.